Live again. Doesn't get old. Seeing that connection now live pop up on Instagram. Welcome to today's tea practice, my friends. Happy Saturday. Yeah, it's Saturday. And welcome to our practice today. We are going to be drinking some silver needle, which is much needed because man, we've been not sleeping. So I decided to drink the tea that I've used to just always like power myself up, snap out of it, get out of funk, which is silver needle. And you know, I'm not an expert on silver needle, but I've been drinking this tea for a long time. It was a tea that I discovered at Tivana. You know, the first time I walked into one, I was like, oh my god, these fluffy leaves, like, wow, the monks pick them only three times a year, and it's reserved for the emperor, and you know, they're really expensive, so they must be good, and Tivana's gonna put in a big tin for me, they're really fuzzy, it's gonna be great. So that was one of my first kind of like falling in love with a tea at first sight, was a silver needle. I think it is the kind of tea that does that to you. I mean, it's just really pretty stuff, right? So we're going to talk about that today. We are going to evaluate a silver needle that I have not yet had. And I want you guys to maybe help me pick out from the 5 samples I have on the table in just a little bit, because I want to kind of just show what our process is for determining if we like a silver needle or not, or if there's any problems with it, maybe even determine where it's from, based on what the flavor profile is like, the look of the leaves, etc. We're not going to do a bowl brew style side-by-side today. I've been kind of like drifting a little bit too much into the side-by-side comparisons. I think it's good to have a balance, you know, have a balance between experiments and then just sitting with the tea. And we've been doing a lot of experiments lately, so I think we need some sitting with the tea time. But with something new, yeah. So in a little bit, I'm going to ask I'm going to have you pick a number 1 through 5. Mm-hmm. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 samples in front of me. I haven't had any of them in a long time. So yeah, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. So let's say hello to our friends. Hi, Steven. How's it going? Steven's going to come on today. I'm just kidding. Jeremy, welcome. Maddie B20, Cha Chai Teets, nice to see you. Havana Fucha, Chris Hull Newbie. New? I don't know. I don't want to call someone a noob. Miri, Dina Lencioni, Astrologe Sergey, Joseph, it's nice to see you. How's it going, Eric? Ever the rebel. I asked you to pick a number from 1 through 5. And what does Eric say?
7.
How about we get the average between 5 and 2? What's the average between 5 and 2? 3.5? Oh my god, Eric. That's our friend T-Sleuth. Enrique Paredes and Alex from Lava the Sheep. Welcome. So again, we have 5 samples here. I have them flipped over so you guys can't choose based on the name. You can just, you know, based on the appearance, I guess. No, not really. They're pretty nondescript. So let's pick a number from 1 through 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one should we do? Again, we'll be talking about evaluating a silver needle that you haven't had for the first time. To see how the quality is, how the plucking standard is. You know, you want to at least get to know if what's being said on the label is true. Because I find that silver needle is one of those teas that regardless of how good or bad the tea is, it's always the best silver needle. Of course, this happens for a lot of tea. But I think for silver needle in particular, companies will tend to always say, oh, this is a rare tea, it's really unusual, it's worth the money, it's expensive, it's you know, the emperor stories, the monk stories. I mean, it's just, yeah. It's a marketing-licious tea, which is why I like to talk about it a lot. I do like it, but you need to pick a good one, I would say. So yeah. Dino Lencioni's first one say 5. Nice. We will do number 5. This is going to be, I'm not going to show you what the name of the tea is. I actually know what the label says, but tell me what you think when you see this guy. This is tea number 5 that Dino picked. What is that? Is that lunch? So this is a silver needle of some kind. Any guesses as to what this is? Guesses as to where it's from? How it might taste? Area? Region? You know? Just gut feeling. Is it going to be good or is it going to be bad? Yeah. I will tell you guys more about this later, but we'll not focus on what the label says. I want to just focus on what we're seeing. In case, like, you don't know the vendor or you don't necessarily know about the vendor and what their standards are yet. And even if you have a favorite vendor, just because they have a good couple teas doesn't mean every single tea is going to be good for them. I mean, even speaking for myself as someone who used to sell tea, there were some things that I was better at sourcing and getting good teas from and understanding better than others. So there's always going to be, you know, a variation, right, in quality. So, yeah. Emma's Teapot, welcome to Tea Practice today. Eric, marketing, it's so hilarious sometimes. Other times it makes me embarrassed to be a human. It's okay, we're all humans. The only species on this planet who can be embarrassed for us is ourselves. So it's just us. Don't worry. Although, I don't know, I think cats can make us feel embarrassed sometimes. Certainly not dogs, right? I don't know. But I think it's funny. I used to be embarrassed by like the marketing in the tea community as well for a while. But after a while, you're like, well, everyone's got to start somewhere. And it's true that when I first started drinking tea, I didn't really know much about what I liked. And I usually just picked based on what the story was like. So, you know, yeah, that's literally how I picked Silver Needle when I went to Tivana. I looked at their price list that they had. It was the highest priced tea. And I was like, wow, what is that like? And then they gave me the story about how it was only picked 3 days out of the year. I always keep telling the story because I remember it so well, because of how beautiful it was and then how betrayed I got once I went home and Googled it and everyone had a Silver Needle too. It's not somewhere like only the emperor has it. And, you know, I think I was maybe 18 or 19 at the time. So I should have known, hey Ree, you know that there's no emperors in China anymore. So then, if there are no emperors in China anymore, why are they using this marketing for this modern tea? But the thing is, even if we're smart people, you know, we buy into stories so much, right? Like, I love history, you know, I grew up in the Philippines, like China was our neighbor. We knew that they had, you know, they weren't a monarchy anymore. They weren't like a dynasty anymore, and yet I bought into it. So don't feel bad about it. I think it's natural for us to kind of like start somewhere with our tea journey. But the most important thing now is to equip ourselves with like the critical thinking skills once we are faced with like the tea and not what's on the label. So Jeremy's guess was Jingu Silver Needles, Kate. Okay. So Jingu, that Jeremy, who's TJ9, is talking about, is a really famous Silver Needle area in Yunnan province. Most of you guys know Yunnan for being Pu'er land, Pu'er Disneyland, but they also make Silver Needle. So that's a really good guess. I'm not going to confirm or deny. And Silver Needle from Yunnan will tend to have this kind of like yellowish color. So I think Jeremy, this is really, really good for a guess too. And the buds are really big. They're thick. They're like really, really big buds, even for a Silver Needle. And for those who just starting to get the Silver Needle, it is characterized just by having the buds only as part of the plucking. Basically, when they pick the plant, they only get the buds out. The leaves, you know, it's not that they discard the leaves. I mean, you can pick Silver Needle with the leaves still there, but often they'll just pick when the bud is just boop, and there's no leaves yet that have come out of the plant. This can depend based on the region, but just for our purposes, we'll call like Silver Needle to be like classic, like Chinese Silver Needle. You'll also hear about like Nepalese Silver Needle. One of these samples is actually a sample from another region. I'm not gonna tell you which one it was, but I don't know. What do you guys feel about calling a buddy tea from another region Silver Needle when it's not from China? Because technically, people will argue the only real Silver Needle is from Fujian province or Fuding town, you know, specifically only in that one town where like white tea was first developed, that one region, you know, like there's some really famous white tea towns in China. And you might have heard of Fujian before. It's where Anshi Tiguanyin, you know, Iron Goddess of Mercy is from there too. Wuyi oolongs are from there, you know, stuff like Jinjinmei, Lapsang Souchong's from there too. So as many of you know, there's a lot of friggin' tea in Fujian. But some people will argue that only white tea from Fujian is considered to be like legit, quote unquote, white tea. Thoughts on that? I think it might be obvious what my thoughts are on that, but specifically Silver Needle from Fujian is considered to be the most like legit, quote unquote. Yeah. Eric says, oh, I don't know, why argue about names? It only wastes time, drink tea instead. Yeah, I agree with that. But I think it's good to discuss with people who are willing to discuss, because the people who will argue about it anyway. Okay, so here's the buds that have been broken off from this cake. So absolutely, Jeremy, this is a caked silver needle. It's pretty uncommon to find silver needle in cakes. I think it's becoming more common now, that or we're just seeing more of it come to the United States. But from what I understand, pressing white tea of any kind into cakes is relatively recent, or it's relatively recent that it's very popular to do it. Of course, you know, tea and cakes has been around for a long, long, long time, but usually not white tea. But, you know, as some of you have known, you know, white tea used for aging has been a little bit more popular now, so maybe this is why they decided to cake this silver needle. So we're looking at the leaves now. They're really, really fuzzy, like really fuzzy. Doesn't even look like tea. And then you'll notice on the back side of them, they have this kind of like darker line. And what's happening there is that the white part is the fuzzy parts of the bud, the little hairs or pecco, or what else do you call them? Trichomes. And those buds grow these hairs as a form of protection when they're really, really tiny, because remember, this is the first part of the tea plant that pops up. Boop. And like all the plant's energy goes into creating these little buds that pop up. So it doesn't want bugs to eat this part. So the hairs, you know, out of many other things that they do, they help protect the plant, the bud specifically, from getting attacked too much by insects. And then they also contain, like, you know, various amounts of like tea compounds and stuff, etc., etc. But yeah, that's why we have the fuzzies on them. Then on the back, there's this like little stripe here, and that's where the inside of the bud has been exposed and oxidized. So whenever you see leaves that are a little bit browner in color, first thing we'll think about is oxidation, right? So a little bit of oxidation right there. And yeah, think about where else you've seen this kind of like pattern in a tea. And for me, it's like Yue Guangbai, Moonlight White, right? You guys know that tea. If you don't, it's a white tea from Yunnan province, and it's called Yue Guangbai or Moonlight White because it has that white kind of surface on the top of the leaf, and then on the bottom, it's got that dark surface. It's dark oxidation. Yeah, so pretty good, you know, pretty good guess that it's from Yunnan. It's not confirmed yet, but if you can think about what a tea kind of looks like when you're trying to determine where it's from or what the origin is or what to expect from it, even if you've never had that tea before, I don't think it's a problem if you compare it to something you've seen before, you know? Yeah, it is. Welcome to Tea Practice. Eric says, my issue with compressed anything is that it gets a compression taste that doesn't always complement the tea. So what Eric is talking about is, we mentioned that not all silver needle is compressed. And yes, if you press your silver needle into cakes like this producer did, it will change the way that the tea tastes and ages over time. Because let's say we have a couple of babes like this, a couple dudes like this, you know, hanging out. The way that they age over time, the way that the air passes over them, the way that they, you know, develop microbially over time, just physically, the kind of like scattered, will look different from this guy, which has just like an even surface area, and also less exposure to air overall. And anything that's pressed into cake gets what's called that compression taste that Eric talks about. I don't want to explain it. I think that's one of the things that's better tasted than explained. But if you can get your hands on a tea that's like available both loose and pressed, it's a really good, I think it's a really good experience to try. All right, and if not, you can take something that's been caked like this. Well, yeah, no, I think it's better if you just get something that's already been pressed and then the loose leaf version of it. I was about to say you can just take a cake that's been caked up already and then break it up, but the steaming process that they need to like make it into a cake will change the flavor too. So anyway, just find one that's a cake and then the loose leaf version. I think Zhuang tea has a tea like that. The Tiansa. It's an amazing Yunnan white tea. Yeah, it's really good. Really recommend it. And Jeremy, yes, I think it's Moonlight White that this tea kind of looks like, right? Delphine, welcome to tea practice today. Spice 401, Iran tea. Welcome to tea practice today. We're talking about silver needle. Our friend Dino picked a tea sample at random for us. This is tea sample number 5. Yeah, so I'm gonna let these guys in the Gaiwan sit here for a minute. I just feel like drinking the tea right now. And there's like little fuzzies floating on the surface. It's a very fuzzy tea. Those of you who drink a lot of pu'er know that your pu'er has a lot of fuzzy hairs too. So think about where this tea could have come from. It's a larger leaf material, larger buds, a place that has larger, you know, plants that create these larger buds, Yunnan province. I guess another option could be, you know, Laos or Vietnam. Thailand has some of these big trees too. Yeah, just keep them in mind, like options that this thing might be from. Ooh, that's juicy. Yes, Dino, we did use near boiling water. I was talking for a bit, so it's not at boiling, but it was a little under. I highly recommend, if you are brave enough to do it, which I think you should be, don't be scared of your tea. They're just leaves. They're not going to hurt you. I really highly recommend boiling your silver needle to try it out. Yes, I know this is contentious. I was taught by Tivana to brew silver needle at 175 degrees Fahrenheit, 80 degrees Celsius. Is that right? Celsius, gang? 175 degrees Fahrenheit, 80 degrees Celsius. And I was just so betrayed by Tivana for so many years because, in truth, when you have a bud like this, it's all wrapped up, right? Like there's like this hard, like kind of, it looks very soft, right? But I'm gonna try to like click it on video. Can you like hear the clicking sound? It's a tough leaf. I'm like flicking it, right? But it's got some strength to it. So this whole image of silver needle being this delicate tea that needs to be babied and you got to be soft with it because it's gonna break and stuff. This is where the plant put all its energy. It's not gonna make a super delicate, fragile thing. I mean, yes, they're soft. It can be, you know, like we need to be careful with our leaves, but it's also not made of glass. So, you know, hit your silver needle, see what it can do. And we brewed this at near boiling, and there's almost no bitterness at all whatsoever. And it's not a flash steep. I used maybe like, looks like a good maybe 2 grams. I don't use a lot of leaf when I brew in a gaiwan. Whether you use a high ratio or a low ratio, you know, adjust a little bit. But I really do believe that a good silver needle will be able to take the heat. And I'm really happy with this. There's absolutely no bitterness at all whatsoever. Wow, that's lovely. Wow, that's really good. That's really good. That's really good. Ooh, wow. And punchy. That's waking me up. So our decision to have a silver needle today is going to pay off, I think. Makes me go like this. And then that's another thing too. As you build your, you know, library of flavors, your flavor library, also try to build like a feeling library. What do different regions of the world make you feel? So like I really love Taiwan. I really love Taiwanese tea. And so when I have a Taiwanese tea, it's not 100% accurate, but I can almost like feel like, hey, this feels like a really familiar friend. This is my best friend, the friend I've known for a long time. So not only am I evaluating how the tea tastes, I'm also trying to help it tell me what it is by how it feels like. I know it sounds a little bit woo or like, you know, kind of metaphysical, but just think about how you feel when you have your favorite food or when you go to your favorite restaurant. You have that like unique feeling attached to that place that I bet if I blindfolded you and I gave you like, you know, curry from your favorite Indian restaurant and curry from another place, and they taste the same, similar herbs, whatever, you'd be able to just feel that you know your favorite spot because you just had so much takeout from there. You just always go there. That's just the spot. For me and Steven, it's Mr. Chopsticks down the road. That place is so good. It speaks to my heart all the time. Yeah, you could blindfold me and have me do 3 different kinds of orange chicken. Yes, we order orange chicken from that Chinese place, Taiwanese place, but it's amazing. It's like the most amazing orange chicken in the world. Anyway, you could blindfold me, give me 3 different orange chickens, and I would know which one is the Mr. Chopsticks one, because that's my heart orange chicken. And the taste too. So those 2 things, the feeling and then the taste together, will make you a much better like blind taster, much better evaluator of tea. Yeah, so this to me, it wakes me up, it makes me go, whoa, what the hell is going on? And to me, that tells me Yunnan. Yunnan white teas will tend to make me go, whew, wow, that's like, it's got a lot of pep to it, a lot of energy to it. And it's like immediate. Me and Steven were holding our faces earlier. You can feel kind of tingle in your cheeks, you know? At least for me. Can you feel that, Steven? It's like tingling in the face, you know, it's got something going on. A lot of movement. Those of you who follow Floating Leaves, they'll talk about movement in tea a lot. Steven and I are not experts in the fundamental structures of tea, although we're students, you know, but does the tea move? How does it move, etc., you know? Does it stay in one place? Does it go different parts of your body? What does it do? And this, to me, it just feels very Yunnan. This just feels like the way that Yunnan does things to me. Yunnan province, that is, especially for a white tea. Yunnan pu'er will feel a little bit different from Yunnan white tea. Yeah, so it's just very familiar. So I think, you know, even if I do know what this is, it does read to me like a Yunnan silver needle. Let's talk about the flavor profile you guys are asking. Is it strong? Steven, is it strong? I would say that it's...
Or silver needle, I guess.
I think it's present. So for people who, you know, I think a lot of people have said to me in the past that silver needle or white tea is not for them because it's too delicate, it's too light, and I totally get that. And I think that it's a travesty of so many of us being told to brew it at 175 or 80 degrees Celsius. Thanks, Delphine, for the Celsius confirmation. If you don't like silver needle, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, silver needle's okay, I prefer white peony, or, you know, I don't like yin zhen, you know, I don't like bai hao yin zhen, I like bai mu dan better, the Chinese names. I totally get it, like silver needle is its own thing, but give it a chance and try to boil it. Because there's absolutely no bitterness, no astringency whatsoever. It's very smooth. If I had to think about what it tastes like, why do I say maple water? It kind of has that maple water thing going on, doesn't it, Steven? Like, it's just very, like, whole and sweet and juicy and like a tree. It's very sweet. It's like sweet tree juice is what this reminds me of. Does that sound pretty accurate? Sweet tree juice with, like, flowers sprinkled in. It is very floral, I would say, with just, like, a little bit of, like, that little citrusy pop. If someone poured this over some ice cubes, put in like a champagne glass, and like maybe put just a tiny bit of sugar in it, it would be a really fancy drink. Very, very tasty. Something else I can compare it to, you know those elderflower drinks at IKEA? those like elderberry drinks, it kind of tastes like that too. Just that kind of like floral, but not obvious floral. Like there's rose or orchid. They're so basic. That's like that basic flower, right? Like orchid. Ugh, Tigawanian's so basic. You know, like of all the floral notes, you want to pick orchid? That's just been so done before. But not to rag on you know, Tigawanian, which is known for the orchid taste. But this has like a very like. It's just a very different flower taste, like a white flowers, but not jasmine. You know, like it's just, yeah. You know when you go to like a bar and the person who's making the cocktails is making something really fancy and they're like, this is a simple syrup made from etc. herbs and flowers. That's what this tastes like. Very complex, lots of stuff going on. So is it strong? It's not strong in the way that a black tea is, but is it weak? Absolutely not. It's very, very sweet, very, very smooth, extremely juicy. I'm going to let this sit for a little bit. This is now boiling. And yeah, I will prove to you that there's not going to be any bitterness that comes out from this tea, now that I've seen from the very first steep that it won't. Will some silver needle not do well with boiling water? Yes. Then what? Look at the packaging, and if it says highest grade silver needle, best silver needle ever, DM me, and then we'll go burn down there. I'm just kidding. DM me, tell me about it, because I personally believe that if a silver needle can't take boiling water, there's something wrong in the processing. And I'm not a silver needle tea maker. I'm not a silver needle expert. I've never been to Fujian to make silver needle. I've been to Fujian, like Weishan. I've been to Hui Mountains, but I haven't been to where they make silver needle in China. But I'm confident saying that because of what I've observed, right? I don't make sweeping statements based on something I read or something I heard from someone else. I test it, and just over like the last 10 plus years of drinking silver needle, I have never encountered a single high quality silver needle that broke down under boiling water. Not a single one. I can't think of a single one, okay? So, you know, if you find one that's amazing, but it doesn't do well with boiling water, let me know. That's a data point, right? But I'm also a little bit suspicious of it, I have to say. You just form your own patterns, you know? And the thing is, if you disagree with me and you're like, oh, every single silver needle I've ever had that I've liked hates boiling water, it's just terrible with boiling water, but it's amazing at this temperature, and you have tried my method too, and you still believe it's wrong, then that's fine. Absolutely fine. Like, use your patterns, I use mine, we can share, and yeah, we'll go from there. So second steep, darker color. I'm not scared at all. I think it'll taste just fine, if I'm being perfectly honest. So second steep. Smells really good. It's got a floral, kind of water from a tree thing going on. Let me know what you guys are drinking too. I forgot to ask that. We're usually setting up some elaborate experiment, so that's what I usually ask. But let us know what you guys are drinking. Good stuff. This is very good. So I will say I like the second steep less than the first steep, which to me, you know, I'm not done evaluating this tea, but another thing you can do is to track how the tea goes from steep to steep. And if the first one's like, wow, amazing, that's just amazing steep, holy crap, and then it goes down, see where it goes, because if the tea is good at the beginning, then it goes down. Something, I'm not sure if that's a good thing. You want a tea that's pretty consistent, at least for a couple steeps. And yeah, we'll just track to see where this is going. I'm not saying yet that I don't like this tea, but the fact that it went up and then down, I'm not sure. We'll see where this goes. I still do like it though. I still do like it. I guess what I'm saying is if the flavor drops quite a lot on the second steep, be aware if the flavor will drop off a lot on the third and fourth steeps, because you don't want a tea that's like good, and then it drops off. You want it to have like a kind of gradual decline. just means that the tea was relatively like well processed, pretty even, pretty consistent, you know? Yeah. What are you guys drinking out there? You guys are drinking some gyokuro, some sencha. Eric's having some balyocha, which I'm very excited about for you guys who are part of the Korean group. Bye! We're gonna get some Korean tea. I'm really excited. Yeah, honestly, I don't know Korean tea as much, so man, Eric, if those tea shows up and they break my heart, I might just quit tea because I haven't been this excited about a group buy in like forever. Yeah. For those of you who weren't on the Korean group buy, our friend Eric from Tea Sleuth helped out Korean ceramicist Arthur Park, Korean American ceramicist, and balyocha is one of those like mysterious Korean teas that are only, you know, balyocha is only from Korea, as far as I've ever seen, as far as we've ever seen. It's Eric says balyocha instead of balyocha black or balyocha oolong because it's not either. It's just its own thing. I guess the closest it would be is like kind of like an oolong-y, yellowy black tea. But Eric's probably gonna murder me for trying to put it into a box. It can't be put into a box. Alex is having some sugar white. Yeah. And I think Jeremy had some bilochon from Yunnan. We'll see if it's the same. It kind of it is. It's from Yunnan. But we'll see. Okay. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. I just want to make sure that this tea doesn't go downwards, you know? So let's look at the leaves to think more about where this tea might be from. Look at how fat those buds are. They thick. They're like really thick buds. So, ooh, wow. These are massive. They're like the beak of a, you know, bird, pelican. Boop, boop. They're really big. So this tells me that just compared to the regular silver needle, it's probably not Fujian province. I do have a Fujian white tea here that I want to compare. That's just the size. I just want to show you the size difference. Yeah, I'm opening the sample for you. So look at the difference between, ooh, it broke. That's not good. I pulled out the bud from that sample and it broke. Not sure why. That's not a good sign. Weak buds. Maybe just that one. Yeah, maybe just that one. All right. So this is from Fujian. That's Fujian, Fujian province. This is like a more classic, quote-unquote, silver needle. I'd say it's like the default if you find it online. And then this is the one that we're having right now. So I know this one's wet, this one's dry. But look how big the difference is. This one's really, really big. It's like almost, it's like a good like 25% taller than the other one. Or even like, yeah, it's just big. So this one here is Fujian. And yes, I'm going to confirm what Jeremy said. This is from Yunnan. The tea that we're drinking right now is from Yunnan province. It is a Yunnan silver needle. And yeah, you can just tell. The Yunnan, if any of you, you know, drink pu'er, obviously you guys do. If you haven't yet, you've probably seen pictures of those really, really big tea plants in Yunnan. They just tend to have bigger buds. So I have never seen buds this big from Fujian province. It feels like Yunnan. It looks like Yunnan. It's Yunnan silver needle. Now, why is that important? So good, we have the trivia. Woohoo! So this is trivia night. Jeremy gets a point because he successfully, you know, guessed that it is from Yunnan. And yeah, that's important because not just because we want to know what the naming is just for shits and giggles, but we also want to compare like the value, the flavor profile, the aging potential of the tea is going to be different from Fujian versus Yunnan. So Yunnan silver needles, because they're not the most famous region for silver needle, you'll always get a better deal from a place that is not famous for that tea. So that's not to say it's always going to be good, but I would say, can I say this? Yeah, let's say it. For a silver needle of similar grade and quality, the Fujian version will be just a little bit more expensive than a comparable Yunnan silver needle because the Fujian gets the famous points, okay? There are more people willing to pay for that level of that silver needle. But the problem is, because this place is famous for a reason, right? Famous for a region. We're so dumb. Fujian is famous for a reason. They know how to make this stuff. The tea maker who's making that silver needle is making silver needle the way that like someone taught them. Their cousins make it, their uncle makes it. There's books in the local library about it. In Fujian, do they have books in the local library about pu'er? Probably not. I don't know if they have like open source libraries there, but they're not talking about pu'er production there. They're not making pu'er there. They're not talking about green tea. They're not making sencha. They're not talking about, oolong in that town. They're talking about white tea. So if you get a bunch of white tea nerds together, they're going to make really good white tea, right? So tendencies are you will have, on average, like a higher quality white tea from Fujian because people know how to make it. And if someone messes up, they're like, dude, like, give me a, what's a name? Like, Karen, I'm sorry. Karen, what's wrong with this tea? Why did you mess up the silver needle? What did you do? It looks all messed up. Neighbor goes over to Karen's house. Don't you know how to make silver needle? Like, if someone messes up in that area, it's easier for someone to help them fix their processing issues because they're white tea people, We're making it very basic here, but it really follows through. For example, my tea teacher in Taiwan doesn't make pu'er, so then how would you expect her to make a good pu'er her first time, right? Over in Yunnan, yes, there are areas that are known for white tea production, so if you go to Yunnan, maybe pick a place that's famous for white tea specifically, because there are towns. But it's just like a nameless Yunnan tea. It could be from anywhere. It could be like a batch that someone made, a one-off thing. And, it's really exciting when someone's like, oh, this is a one-off batch. We don't usually do this. It's rare, unusual. But even as someone who gets excited about experimental batches, experimental sometimes also means we don't know how to do this yet, so we're just trying it out the first time. And even for the most experienced tea maker, if they're making it tea for the first time, or they've only been doing it for a couple years, even 5 years, imagine someone making pu'er who also makes a little bit of white tea, but he's making the pu'er for 50 years, but he's only been making the white tea for 10 years. There is going to be a difference in quality there. So stuff to just think about. Like Eric says, a famous place will also have more demand, less supply. You guys have seen this from Dragonwell. Like, I have never found a Westlake Dragonwell from the original area that I love. You guys know about this, right? How Dragonwell, probably the most famous of like fake tea, discussions. Dragonwell should be from Westlake or Shihu from Zhejiang province, right? If it's from outside of there, it's not considered to be legit Dragonwell. You might have heard the names like Shifeng Longjing or Meijiawu, Westlake Dragonwell, Shihu Xihu Longjing. Those are all supposed to be like the legit. And if something is called Zhejiang Dragonwell, because they're not saying specifically where it's from, it might not be from like the original area, because tendencies are if it's from the OG area, they're gonna friggin' tell you, right? I personally have never had a really, really, really mind-blowing, amazing change in my world Westlake Dragonwell. And the reason why is it probably hasn't gotten to me because someone who lives there already eats it up. And I know this is said a lot about many other teas. Oh, it doesn't make it out of the town, it doesn't make it out of wherever. But for Dragonwell, it's even more so, because if you look at where Dragonwell is, Westlake, where Dragonwell is being made, it's very close to like a big city with a lot of money, etc. Same thing for Iron Goddess, Tiguanyin. It's made in Anxi, which you can get to Anxi like in an hour from Xiamen, which we're always in Xiamen. So people with money can take a day trip there, buy the tea, then come back. So there's just money, right? There's money like just flowing in, and they have no need to export it. So I'm not saying that there's no Westlake Dragon Well. That's very, very, very amazing that gets out, but it's less likely. Now, my favorite Dragon Well has been from outside of Westlake, which, you know, some people might be like, oh, then you don't know what real Dragon Well is like. You just, maybe it's true. I haven't had like a mind-blowing Westlake, but I know that the Dragon Well I love the most is from actually outside the original area. It's still quite expensive, but what I get for the price, because I'm not paying as much for the famousness, is just mind-blowing. Like, it changed my mind about Dragon Well forever, and the idea that it has to be from the famous place to be really, really good. So just keep that in mind, right? That's what's happening with this Yunnan Silver Needle. The Silver Needle I would get for this price that I paid for this in Fujian, the original famous, more known place, would be a little bit less than this one, I would say. Pricing's complicated for sure, but if this was 50 cents a gram from Yunnan, and I had 50 cents a gram to invest into a Fujian Silver Needle, the Yunnan one would probably be just a tiny bit better. Just on average, just in general, you know. Of course, you guys know it's a case-by-case basis. Don't take any of this as like set in stone stuff, but yeah, this is why this tea is very, very inexpensive, and it's still very good. I don't think we could get a Silver Needle this good from Fujian, I would say, because it's pretty good. Okay, that was a long one, but just trying to explain, it's not just, wow, I know where the region is from. Not only that, you also know like the backstory of it. That makes it even cooler that you have the points for the region. So good job, Jeremy. For those of you joining us right now, we're talking about Silver Needle and comparing it, evaluating it, price factors, taste factors, playing with leaves. They're so pretty. Now, I am going to look at the leaves a little bit more. I suspected that this wasn't the highest grade Silver Needle possible because remember when you first started, there were like these hints of oxidation kind of peeking out on the leaves, and this does not happen when you have a Silver Needle that's picked without the leaves. So I'm going to do this. So you see this leaf here. Let's talk about the leaf standard now. Here's the bud. What is this black area here, like this darker part, right? That's a bit of leaf surface being exposed. And in theory, Silver Needle should only be the bud. There we go. So it should only be this part here that, you know, you see now it doesn't have as much of that dark oxidation going on. I snipped the leaf off. See how dark it is? Technically, if we really want to be picky about it, they shouldn't have let the bud grow big enough that this leaf is still here, or they should have like sorted it out. If you want to be really, really picky about just having the buds, because that's how it's marketed to us, right? It's buds only. In truth, though, this Silver Needle does have leaf attached to it still. It doesn't bother me. Because the price is quite low on it. But if you are paying for a very, very high-grade Silver Needle, please do look to see if there's any leaves that are kind of hanging off, because it should only be buds. You know, let's do another one if I can find one. It's a pretty good Silver Needle, don't get me wrong, but if we're trying to be picky, right? Most of it is just buds, but some of it is older. There's so many factors, because if it's organic, if it's biodynamic, you know, like not fertilizer style, it's going to be a little bit different. So is this wild grown? Is it not? But it's not being told to me what it is yet, so I'm just going to look at the leaves and look for consistency for sure. We've talked about this before, that if it's from a natural or wild grown tea garden, tea forest, tea area, the leaf sizes will be a little bit more inconsistent, so I'm willing to forgive that more. But if it's from like a silver needle being marketed as like a very consistent product, it shouldn't have the leaves. And yes, we're still seeing these leaves here attached to the buds. So it's not the highest grade silver needle. You can do that with the dry leaves. You can also do it with the wet leaves. Check out to see if there's breakage. So, like, this is my favorite. So look at this bud here. It doesn't have the bottom stem attached still. You can see where it's been torn off. See that? Little, like, torn off bit. This might have been from storage and handling, though, because when something is broken after it's been processed, it's not going to have that red tint there because it stopped oxidizing already, right? But if something was broken during the processing, you can see a bit of red tint. Oh, there you go. This is reddish. So this broke during the processing. So that's a problem because that's adding a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of sourness to the tea. But basically there's some broken stuff going on here. This was a cake, so probably this piece was broken off just because it was part of a cake. But there are some pieces in here that look like they were broken before the leaf was pressed, which I'm not the biggest fan of. It's just not as consistent, not as high grade, you know? And by not the biggest fan of, I'm being hard on the tea. It's a good tea for the price. You know, compare the price to the grade. For the price, this is a very, very good tea. Yeah, really good. The problem is when someone's touting the silver needle as being like the greatest silver needle in the world, highest grade, etc., then you better, like, you know, really pick at the leaves and taste the tea and, you know, combine all these things, the feeling of the tea, the origin, etc., to really suss out if it's worth it. I guess is what we're trying to pick out. Because none of us want to feel like we've been ripped off. None of us want to feel like we've been duped. We all want to feel like we understand the tea enough to be confident to enjoy it, right? I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but sometimes I like a tea, but if I don't know much about it, I'm like, should I like this tea? Is it really good? Is it really high grade? Or am I just a noob? Am I, like, too simple to understand what this tea is supposed to be like? Did I pay the right price? I think it's good, but would an expert think it's good? You know, I'm not sure if I'm the only one who feels that way. Like, am I allowed to like this tea? And the more you build these skills to help you make your own determinations of whether or not the tea is worth it, I think it goes away more. I certainly still feel it, but it goes away more once you have that kind of confidence to evaluate. Now, let's see. Rahain says, what's the advantage taste-wise of having your yin in a cake? So, Eric from Tea Sleuth talked about this earlier. When you have it in a cake, it will age a little bit differently. And to get it to be a cake, which I've never seen a cake being pressed on the tea farms before. The first time I ever saw a cake being pressed was in this room when we tried to press Dragon Ball tea leaves together into a cake. But it was a very illuminating process because I'd seen processing before of pour cakes, you know, I've seen videos of it before, but there's a smell component that happens when you're pressing the leaves into a cake. So let me explain more about what I mean about that. They start out like this, right? Of course, no tea starts out as a cake. You guys all know that. I'm so dumb. You guys know this. It all starts out as individual leaves, right? They have to do something to get them to stick together, right? So what they have to do is to steam these guys. It's like they're going to start as a big ball like this. Imagine like a big fluffy ball. Everything that's in here, they're all fluffed up. They have to steam it and then press it with either a stone or a hydraulic press to get it to stick together. And that steaming process will change the flavor and the smell of the tea. What we got when we steamed our Dragon Ball leaves to press them into cakes was a smell like shampoo. I don't know what that is, but it's a steaming flavor. Like I think what it does, it accelerates the fermentation of the tea a little bit faster. it probably introduces a little bit of oxidation to the tea as well. Know that with white tea, I think here's a big hole in like the processing story about white tea. We say it's picked, it's, withered, it's dried. The drying for white tea is different from other teas in that it doesn't undergo an oxidation kill. It's like the enzymes that are like, oh, let's make the leaves brown. They don't always die when white tea is being dried. Unlike with something like oolong or black tea, where they apply enough heat to the tea to like almost completely kill those enzymes. So think about it. If you guys have aged white tea, what color are they? They're like brown, Ree. Like, especially like my 2012 Shomei. It's like really brown. So if white tea has no oxidation, or it's been killed green, how did your white tea become brown when it started not brown, right? So that tells us that white tea will still oxidize over time, and that's because when it's processed, it doesn't completely kill the enzymes. Now, when the silver needle is steamed, I think, I'm not an expert again, but from what I know, that steam will just boost that fermentation oxidation process just a little bit faster. And also the way that the tea is compressed, it tends to kind of preserve the aromatics, preserve the flavor of the tea. They change though, they do change. So personally, I don't prefer cakes of tea. If I can get something that's loose, I prefer it because I'm aware that my preference for tea is tasting the tea as it is. That's just me. I don't like tasting for age. I don't like tasting for storage that much. I'm not the biggest fan of, altering a tea after it's been made. I want to taste what the tea maker wanted it to be when they first made it. It is a decision on the tea maker's part to press it, but I just want to taste the tea. So if I can help it, I would personally get loose tea leaves because I like the taste better. And that's, again, something I don't want to explain too much how the difference is. I want you to taste it. I think the Zhuoang tea has a cake of a tea that they also have a loose leaf version of. I'm sure that Yunnan Sourcing and maybe Crimson Lotus and all of our poorer friends have some examples of this too. And I'm sure if there's not one, just hit up Glenn on Crimson Lotus. He'll be like, yeah, that's awesome, let's do it. Yeah, so I hope it answers your question, Raphael. Enrique, which effect did the pressing had on the Longjing's flavor? So the Longjing we did earlier, that we were talking about, it made it taste like a shangpo. To me, yeah, it really did. I didn't expect that, but when we steamed the Longjing, which had been kill-greened, meaning it was stopped, in theory that tea was done. It was an old Longjing, stale, 3 years old, but when we steamed it and pressed it, it tasted like a shangpo. And I am not kidding. I'm not kidding. I shocked myself with that. It wasn't like I was expecting that to happen. We were really shocked by how shangpo like it became. So tea processing is very interesting. There's so many different things going on. Microbiome, oxidation, fermentation, storage, etc. Yeah, it's very exciting. And again, we're not experts on this. I have never made silver needle in China. I made a silver needle in Nepal, which is not, that's BS. I'll tell that story really quick. I made a silver needle in Nepal because I didn't know how to make any tea, and I love silver needle so much that I was like, white tea is just picked and dried, right? So I'm just gonna I don't know how to make oolong. I don't know how to make black tea. I'm in Nepal, right? But I know how to pick silver needle. You just pick the bud, right? And you just dry it, which in theory is true. But the thing is with white tea, because it's so simple, it takes a lot of effort to make sure it tastes good. Anyone who cooks or bakes, the more simple your recipe, the more you better make sure that every step is perfect, because any issue will make a difference. For example, if you pick the buds using your fingers, which are soft, and your nails, which are, dangerous, tea leaf killing, beheading guillotines, these fingernails. That makes a difference, actually. Whether you pick it with just the finger or with the fingernails. Especially for a white tea, because that's going to oxidize that stem, right? Right where someone like plucks, if they pluck it up, it's very gentle. If they like use a fingernail or a cutter, it's going to come out in the tea, right? So the more simple the tea is, the better your skill gotta be, you know? So did that silver needle I make in Nepal taste good? No. It didn't taste like anything. And that's why, let's connect the dots now. When there is marketing that's worth it, or actually saying something to you from a trusted vendor, they will say it's important that silver needle is picked early in the season, a higher grade leaf material, they have to use a certain cultivar, a certain kind of tea plant for it, because you gotta have good buds. Bud's gonna be good, you know, like it's gotta be good stuff. Otherwise, the tip itself, if you've had just tips from other tea leaves that are not like silver needle, they don't taste like much on their own. You need a lot of them to have a taste. So you have to have a good one. And just the withering needs to be perfect. You can't oxidize it too much. The drying has to be perfect. Whether it's sun-dried versus dried indoors, you know, you gotta like factor all that stuff in. And yeah. One more thing. I gotta award one more point before we finished this stream. Jeremy's guess was Jingu Yunnan silver needle at the very beginning of this. Guess what, Jeremy? It's a freaking Jingu silver needle. So Jeremy actually not only guessed where this tea is from as a province, but you also guessed the town, the area that this tea is from. It's from Jingu in Yunnan. And this is something you just develop over time looking at so many tea leaves, is Jingu as a town has really, really, really thick buds on their plants. Yunnan has so many different plants, like it's all like big leaf plants, but there's just so much genetic variation, and the leaves in Jingu, they just decided they're good for white tea, and they're very delicious. And they have this kind of like floral, kind of aromatic thing going on, which whenever I see that like interesting exotic floral thing going on, that's Jingu for me. So I would have guessed the same thing, but I'm cheating. I think Jeremy gets more points than I do because I had the label. So yeah, this is a Jingu silver needle. For those of you who've never heard of it, it's a famous area in Yunnan. I'm not sure if it's a town or not. I've never been to Yunnan, but it's a specific origin. Like compared to the whole of Yunnan, it's a small place. Because Yunnan's huge, just a small area. And they're known for silver needle. So this makes sense now. It's like, oh, Yunnan's not known for silver needle, but there's a place in Yunnan that tends to make silver needle. So those guys living in that area actually do know how to make white tea, because they often do. So remember we talked about it like in Fujian, how like, oh, they'll know in their village, you know, how to make white tea, etc. In Jingu, because they're used to making this kind of white tea, they can also trade notes, etc. But like if you find like a, I don't know, Bingdao white tea, or like Lamana white tea, or like, I don't know, even like a Nanwal white tea, unless that specific person like studied somewhere else, it's just not, they don't have a history of it yet. So while it's exciting, you know, make sure you factor in the fact that it might still be experimental. Same thing for like Taiwanese white tea. Like, you know, Taiwanese white tea can be hit or miss. Sometimes they don't last as many infusions as, you know, Chinese silver needle, so Chinese white tea, because they're not used to it yet. And last point, this is why a lot of the bud-only white teas from other regions, like this one's from Indonesia. We didn't get to this one, but they might not be as good. Not because those places aren't good tea places, but because they don't have the practice yet. So don't count out other places that don't have the perfect silver needle yet. They just need more practice. I would also say I wish that they'd call it something different. Like, I don't want to call a Nepalese silver needle. I want it to be its own thing, because they might develop their own techniques, you know. So yeah, this tea is just perfect. Really, really good. Very pleasant tea. But yeah, thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about Silver Needle, we have our blog post up on the blog. Link in bio for that. We have comparisons of these, but otherwise, thanks for joining us. Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.